To me, OnePlus has always tried to remain in the safe side of the market, not innovating. It always felt that the OnePlus phones were catching up with others. This leaves them with one option, that is their signature trait, giving flagship features in a budget price tag. With that, here's the OnePlus 6T, which takes a few leaps forward in the right direction since its predecessor the OnePlus 6. Taking a look at the front, which is the main highlight of this phone, again the screen to body ratio is slightly bigger compared to the OnePlus 6 with a smaller teardrop notch with a thinner chin. Now the display itself though is a 6.41 inches AMOLED display, which is again more or less the same as the OnePlus 6. Now I would say that the display shows stunning vibrant colors and gets adequately bright. Now taking a look at the back, we have a familiar dual lens camera setup with the OnePlus logo just below it. Now the finish that I have here is the midnight black. The phone actually comes in two other variants, namely mirror black and thunder purple. Now I would give props to OnePlus for getting back to the vertical camera setup in the OnePlus 6 and 6T, because this design kind of callbacks to the original OnePlus 1 design. So coming back to the camera setup, the bottom one is a wide angle lens of 16 megapixels with an aperture of f1.7 with OIS. The other is a telephoto lens which is of 20 megapixels f1.7 with no OIS, although both the lenses have a focal length of 27mm. Now coming from an iPhone 6, I would say that the images of the OnePlus 6T are a bit saturated compared to the iPhone 6, but I guess we can only notice the saturation difference when compared. It's pretty subtle. So as there is with any camera app, there's portrait mode, which is pretty rough at the edges. Then comes night mode, which is basically a night sight feature from OnePlus. Now overall I don't have any complaints about it, apart from the fact that it does a lot of smoothing to reduce the grains. As for videos, you can shoot at 720p at 30 frames per second and 4K and 1080p both at 30 and 60 frames per second. Overall I think we are getting a pretty solid camera here. It suffers a little in low light conditions, but that is to be expected with a camera of this size. The picture and video qualities are really among the top dogs in the market, although half-baked features like portrait mode may need some improvement, which I assume to be software based. Next up is performance, and OnePlus is known for it. One major improvement that I saw coming from an iOS device were the animations, or the lack of them. You could say that the animations were a lot shorter but smoother, which really made the phone feel a lot quicker. So far I haven't encountered any crashes, a few hiccups here and there, and that's it. In terms of specs, the model that I have here has Snapdragon 845 with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. And if you're going for the McLaren version with 10 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of internal storage, then we have nothing short of a beast here. Moving on to battery life, the battery life on this phone is straight up humongous. With a 3700 mAh battery, it almost lasts me 1.5 days. Although battery usage is subjective, well, you can charge this phone within 15-20 minutes and expect it to last just as long. Overall, you don't have to worry about charging it again and again. Next up is security, which is the main buzz around this phone. Now, let's talk about the embedded fingerprint scanner first. Now, to be honest, it still feels very first gen to me, as in accuracy is just hit or miss. If your finger is even slightly to the left or right, it won't recognize it. And just in case you didn't know, this time around we have an optical sensor, which means it is light dependent. Now, don't get me wrong, it is an incredible step forward in the right direction, and I want to see more iterations of it, with each being an improvement over the other. I just want to say that this new fingerprint scanner is still in its infancy and needs some time to grow. So because of this, I tend to lean towards another method of unlocking, which is face unlock, which makes use of the front facing camera housed in the notch, And by the way, this time around the earpiece is way at the top, which to be honest doesn't affect the sound quality at all. So getting back to the facial recognition, it's honestly blazing fast. Now, it is no Apple's dot projection, but don't worry, it won't be fooled by a picture of yours. It just works all the time in any lighting condition. Overall, I think the OnePlus 6T is yet another beast of a phone, held back by the fact that it still doesn't have wireless charging, no expandable storage, practically a slower fingerprint scanner, and no headphone jack. But in my opinion, the OnePlus 6T is still one of the best mid-range Android phones out there, and I'm really looking forward to the OnePlus 7 as there's still a lot more room for improvement.